Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Solutions Info. I'm so glad you could join us today, either on your smartphone or your computer, on the caregiversolutions.info website, or whether you're listening on local radio. I'm glad that you could be with us today. This is the show just for you, the family caregiver, the unpaid family caregiver. If you're dealing with someone that has memory loss and you're being the caregiver for them and you're facing challenges, you're facing questions, you don't know where to turn, we'd love to be that extra resource for you, because here we ask the questions and you get the answers. And so we really have lots and lots of information to give you, to share with you. We have expert advice from lots of professionals in the field of healthcare, of Alzheimer's and dementia, and we even have caregivers just like you that are walking in the same shoes that you're walking in, that can share and perhaps learn from their journey. And so this is what this show is all about, is for sharing and caring. We are live from Boca Raton, Florida. And if you have a question, a concern, a comment, a suggestion, I would love to hear from you. You can email me. My email address is delray@arden-courts.com. That's delray@arden-courts.com. Send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. We've had lots of comments and questions and a lot of good feedback from this program. And I hope that you will share it with someone that you know maybe is struggling with this actual topic and with this horrible disease called Alzheimer's and other related dementia. And we know that caregiving is not easy. So hopefully you can sit back, learn something, share something, and we'll all be the better for it. So today's topic is actually a result of receiving an email from a listener. And the listener wants to know about research on Alzheimer's disease. What is happening? How are we going to cure this? What can we do? So before we get into today's topic, I'd like to share some sobering facts with you about Alzheimer's disease, because maybe many of you don't realize how prevalent Alzheimer's disease actually is. Now, according to the National Alzheimer's Association website, and you could actually follow along with this or go to their website, which is alz.org, alz.org, they have their latest facts. These are from March 2015 up on their website right now. They will be putting up some newer ones as the facts are coming in. But right now, we do know that today, 5.3 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's disease, including an estimated 200,000 under the age of 65. Now, that's pretty scary. A lot of people think that Alzheimer's disease is for people that are old, people in their 80s and 90s. That's not the case. Alzheimer's disease can be detected as early as people in their 40s and 50s. So this is something that affects all of us, if not directly, then certainly indirectly. Someone in the United States develops Alzheimer's every 67 seconds. Think about that. Every 67 seconds. In 2050, they're projecting that someone in the United States will develop disease every 33 seconds. So it's very, very important that we try to find a cure for this because it's going to be running over us. If it hasn't affected you now, I would guess to say that in the near future, you're going to know someone either in your family, your extended family, a neighbor, a friend, someone in your neighborhood, somebody that has Alzheimer's or a caregiver who's actually taking care of someone with this disease. Also, among individuals diagnosed with the disease, only 33% are aware that they have it. Now, you might say, well, why is that? Well, one reason is because people don't go early enough to get diagnosed when signs pop up. Sometimes they try to hide it. Sometimes they try to deny it. And sometimes, you're not aware of the signs. So that's what we educate about on this program are some of the warning signs we've talked about in prior shows. And 33% are not aware they have it. And it might be because maybe they have been diagnosed, but maybe they haven't been told. Maybe the doctor has told the caregiver and not the patient. There's lots of reasons why people are not aware that they have it. Among all people living with Alzheimer's disease, only about half have ever been diagnosed. So this goes back to what I just said, that they're not being diagnosed, they're not getting the test done, the proper testing, because of course we know that without proper testing, people can actually be misdiagnosed and think they might have Alzheimer's, and it certainly could be something else. It could be a different kind of dementia. It could be a pseudo-dementia, which is really not a dementia, but it looks like a dementia. So it's very, very important to go to the doctors, to the neurologist, and get all the testing done and get second opinions so that you're not misdiagnosed. Also, Alzheimer's disease is the 6th leading cause of death in the United States and the 5th leading cause of death for those age 65 and older. Alzheimer's is the only cause of death among the top 10 in America that cannot be prevented, cured, or even slowed. So this is very scary. These are facts that we know right now about Alzheimer's disease. When President Reagan went public with the fact that he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, I think he did a great service to people because we started talking about this. A lot of people try to hush it, embarrassed about it, don't know, what to say about it. And I think, ever since then, I think we really have started to have a conversation, but we need to have more of a conversation about these terrible facts and what we can do about them. Now, when we're talking about Alzheimer's disease and we're talking about how we can help people with it, there are some drugs out there that have been FDA approved and that are currently on the market. If you go and look and research, you'll find that nothing new has come on the market in quite some time. And these drugs are there to help with the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, but they certainly don't take it away, and it doesn't really affect the progression of the disease itself. So the medications that are approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to treat the symptoms of Alzheimer's is Aricept, Exelon, Razidine, and Namenda, also named Memantine. And the Memantine or the Namenda is used to treat more moderate to severe Alzheimer's, and the Aricept is more early stages of Alzheimer's. The efficacy, the length of time that these actual drugs work is not a long time. It's only for a limited amount of time because they lose their ability to treat those symptoms after they've been used by the person for a certain amount of time. And so if you have a loved one who is currently taking some of these medications, you might want to talk with the doctor about the efficacy and the prognosis using these particular medications. They are Band-Aids, meaning that they're not a cure, and they don't change the underlying disease process. So that is what we know about the drugs that are currently being used. There's been nothing that actually has been FDA approved for many years. some of the behavioral symptoms that the people with Alzheimer's pretty much exhibit include wandering, agitation, anxiety, depression, and a lot of the research that's going on now is not only to help with these behaviors of Alzheimer's, but they're doing more research now with other things to focus on more of the underlying disease process. And these are things including immunization therapy, drug therapies, cognitive training, physical activity, and treatments that are also used for cardiovascular disease and diabetes, because there's feeling in the health community with the doctors and the scientists and the professionals that anything that's good for your heart is good for your brain, and anything that's bad for your heart is bad for your brain. So there's this connection between brain and heart. So they're focusing on things with cardiovascular that will prevent some of the perhaps swelling or the things that will affect our brain. So we want a whole body approach. And so that's what they're looking at now, because there's a lot of ideas out there about a long time ago, well, Alzheimer's maybe it's caused by aluminum, and maybe it's caused by, lots of other ideas. They're really frantically searching for an answer. And there's lots of research going on all across the country. Certainly here in South Florida, we have many institutes that are performing clinical trial researches all the time. And it's very, very important for people to understand that without clinical trials, we're not going to find a cure, because, these are people that have Alzheimer's, and you can only do so much on rats. And we need people to provide us with that opportunity to use some of the medications that are coming into play and some of these theories that we have to see what works and what doesn't work. And so, it's a big push for people to participate, people that actually have already been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and also people that don't have any dementia at all. And a lot of people do not realize that clinical trials are out there for people that are healthy, that are brain healthy, because certainly the scientists want to look at people that have healthy brains and compare those results to people that have diseased brains, and look and see what they can do and keep track of the outcomes. And so I encourage you at this point right now that check it out and find a clinical trial. And that's what we're going to be talking about. So when we come back from our first commercial break, I'm going to be introducing to you a married couple. The wife is the caregiver. The husband has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And they have agreed to come and share their story about their journey and about their participation in clinical research trials for Alzheimer's. So stay tuned, and we will be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help, because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. Make First Choice your first choice for home health care. First Choice is state certified for Medicare-covered services such as medical treatment and rehabilitation. Qualified healthcare professionals come to your home and work closely with your doctor to build a care plan designed to get you back on your feet as soon as possible. Founded and operated by registered nurses, First Choice Home Health is dedicated to providing exceptional home health care. Their highly skilled medical professionals have the knowledge and ability to provide patients quality care. Call First Choice Home Health at 561-296-8888 561-296-2770. That's 561-296-2770. And tell them you want them as your first choice. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Hi, welcome back. Today's show is all about research for Alzheimer's disease, clinical research trials, and the push to get people into these trials so we can find a cure for Alzheimer's. And here with me today, I'm so excited to introduce to you Barbara Z. and David Clifford. Hi, guys.
Hi, Marcia.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for coming down to beautiful Boca Raton to join us today. I appreciate it, and I really think you're awesome to come and share your story. Barbara, you're a caregiver. You two have been married for how long?
Since 97.
Since 97. And David, you have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And how long ago or how old were you when you were diagnosed?
Approximately 67,
When you were
66, 67. We don't have an exact time, but it's began then, and I've had it for like 7 years now, or 6 years.
okay. So you in the process through this being diagnosed about 7 years ago. And I want to talk a little bit about that because a lot of people, don't go and get the testing. We heard the statistics. They are in denial or they don't understand it well enough to even go and figure out what's going on. So let me hear from you. Who knew something was going on first? David, did you think that you felt you were losing your memory or something wasn't quite right first? Or Barbara, do you think that you noticed something first in David? Is there a chicken hatch first?
Yeah, which came first?
Yes, which came first?
David, you didn't think
Yeah,
so?
I had some loss of memory, and but I ignored it and pushed it aside, and until Barbara gave me commentary about it and told me what she was seeing with me, and of course I didn't want to accept the fact that I was an Alzheimer's victim.
Right.
And never, ever said to him, you need to go because I think there's something wrong with you.
You never said that?
No. What I did say is there's an ad in the paper that some neurologist is doing complimentary brain testing so that you do know where you stand. And I said, that sounds really good. And David said, well, why would you want to go? And I said, well, first of all, it's complimentary. Secondly, you should know in case there's something that you must know of. And the sooner you know, the better.
But you had already seen some signs in David.
Yes.
Can you tell me what those were?
Yes, he would. It got to be where it was really important things that he was forgetting. The most important thing that I remember, which clued me into actually trying to get him to go to take that testing, was that I was working part-time, and I told him that it was Christmas time, and I said, I'm not going to be able to get to the Christmas party at our community today because they've asked me to stay on longer and at the store. And I said, so would you please do me a favor? Very important. Call the clubhouse director and let her know that we won't be there because it was an oversold kind of thing and there were people on the waiting list. Rather than have them lose out, call and please tell her when you get back we were having breakfast. And I said, when you get to taking me back to my car, let him know. And so I leave, I come home, and he said, why didn't you let them know that you... I said, wait a minute. You don't remember this morning at breakfast when I said it's very important that you call? And he said, you never told me.
Okay, so, that's where
You
it
never
starts.
told me.
And many people say that you never told me, that. And that's the red flag, as soon as you hear that. Because, David, in your mind, she never told you. You had no recollection of her telling you to make that phone call. So that was your red flag. But I love it, Barbara, that you didn't say to him, something's wrong with you. You need to go get tested. You said, let's go together.
This was weeks later,
Weeks later.
And I said, you know what? And he said, I'm not going. I don't need to know anything. And I said, all right, I'm going to make an appointment. And he said, you are? I said, yes, I'm going to go and take it, and that's it. And he said, all right, make an appointment for me,
because he's such a good husband and wants to go with you and please you and accommodate you. And so you both went. And I think that was a really good way for you to approach it, really, without being accusatory or getting him upset, because you don't know until you actually go and get tested. It could be a lot of different things. And I thought that was brilliant of you
Thank you,
that you
Marcia.
approached it that way. Yeah. So
I was in denial
You were?
initially. Yes, when she first talked to me about it, but I did go, and it was the beginning of a clarity in my brain. I don't know how else to say it, but I began to recognize issues with myself. Forgetfulness was the biggest part, and that wasn't part of my life. And I began to recognize there is some problem, but of course I fought it.
right.
And it took me a while, but I finally came to a point where, okay,
Okay, let's deal with this. Now you were a businessman, and you
Yes.
had a job that you had to be on task, and you were very busy and very organized in your job. I understand, and so that was something that's your personality. So when you got this diagnosis, it must have just thrown you for a loop.
well, I was in sales for a number of years, and I was primarily on my own. I worked for a company, but they allowed me a lot of freedom, and it was wonderful to work that way. And as I began to see things becoming more difficult, eventually I left my job because of it, because I could not put them in jeopardy. They were too good to me.
Wow.
And,
so you actually saw some of these things happening to you while you were still working.
Yeah, there was lapses in my thoughts, and I knew that there was something going on, and it wasn't me.
Yes.
Just to let you know about time span,
Yes.
he took early retirement at 62 because he saw a problem, and and it wasn't until 2010 when we actually went and had that testing done. So there were signs on the job level, and he just took it as he needed to retire.
Well, that was being very proactive, David.
I loved my company, and I didn't want to sacrifice what I was to that company, and to let them know that I've got a problem and I have to back away, which I did, and it was a very difficult situation because I loved my job.
Wow, that's very admirable. So after you went and had your testing for the free brain testing, did you get diagnosed right after that, through that?
Yes, and again, I was not willing to accept all the values that were given to me, and over time I did, and I still understand it, and I know that I have the disease. But if I've done nothing for myself, I do have a very positive attitude towards the disease. I had two choices to make, and my biggest choice was, how am I going to deal with this, and what probabilities will happen to me as I go along. And I'm seeing that now, because I did have a good memory, and it's difficult for me at this point. But I don't know. I'm not allowing it to take over my life, and that's the biggest thing that I can tell you about the disease that I know of and what it's been doing for me. It's helped me an awful lot. I'm comfortable for the most part, not because I have the disease, but I recognize it's there, and there's not a whole lot more that I can do with it. And if I can set an example for myself, and if it touches others, God bless them.
Oh, thank you so much, because you've come to a point of acceptance of
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And at on that day, he was told by the neurologist that there really wasn't anything that he could give them as a doctor to prevent this from continuing to expand and to progress. The only thing he could offer was research.
Right.
Now, you never know.
Well, let's go back
But
before,
research.
yeah, because, right away, usually as soon as someone has some memory lapses, the doctors are writing that prescription for Aricept. So did he go on Aricept right away?
No.
He didn't. Okay. And you're on the younger side, of being diagnosed, and these facts, you fit right in with the facts that we're talking about here. So did it scare you when you before you came to the point of acceptance, was it pretty scary for you realizing what was happening?
I wasn't terrified, I guess. I was dismayed and a little, what's the word I'm looking for? This isn't me. I have a pretty good talk with, a pretty good handle on language, but I didn't fall into a hole over the whole thing. But I recognize that, being negative about this is not the proper path. It's not in my genes to be negative. And so I've accepted the fact that I have the Alzheimer's. Do I think about it? No, because it has cost me a lot of things that I used to enjoy doing. I love to work with my hands and build things. And, I was afraid to do that because I could have hurt myself. So I backed away
tools
from it.
And
with
things
tools
like that.
and things, and so I've discontinued doing that. So now I'm not sure what I do.
Are there other things that you used to enjoy that you can't do anymore, that you have noticed that you have backed away from besides working with your hands?
I've become more inward over time. I have relationships, but I don't have the close relationship with friends of mine that I used to have by choice, because I don't want to be an embarrassment, and if I don't feel like I can fulfill a lot of the obligations that come with friendship, unfortunately. I mean, I'm not just saying that I don't like people, I do, and that's probably the hardest thing to accept, that I'm not having relationships that I used to have.
And you said that's your choice. What
It's my
about
choice.
people? What about your friends that want to still continue friendship with you, that want to stick by you, that want to be there for you through thick and thin? Do you have friends like that?
I do. I have relationships, I'm not fearful of telling people that I have the disease, and some of them, I guess, would say no to it or whatever. I don't know what their thoughts are. They don't give me any, but I do have people that ignore the fact that I have it, and they're still, "Hi, Dave, and how are you? You feeling okay? How's everything going?" And those types of comments I still get, and I'm comfortable with that. I have Barbara, and she's been very, very. I can't tell you how important she is in my life.
Yeah, she's a wonderful lady and a
Yeah.
wonderful person to have by your side.
He used to be an avid reader, and that was another sign he didn't want to read anymore. I would bring home books from the community library that I knew that he loved that author, and he would just let him sit there. Well, he had a tough time focusing and remembering the characters.
Yes, and
In the
following the
book.
storyline.
So he just pushed
I
it
stopped.
aside.
I stopped reading because I would read a chapter or two, and then I'd have to go back and start all over again. So I was just beating myself over the head with it because I couldn't remember what I read the day before. I read the newspaper from front to back.
Right, because you've got that, and
I
that's
don't
a
have
daily
to,
thing.
yeah,
You don't
and
have
then
to remember
tomorrow I
it.
can read it again. and
Tomorrow's
it's all
another
new.
day, right?
It's all new.
It's all new. Yeah.
But for the most part, I if I have anything I would tell anyone is to accept the fact of what your life is at this point, good, bad, or indifferent. But it's the travel that you take is your decision, is how that road opens for you. And if you go with a negative attitude, it's going to stay that way, and your life is going to end in that negative approach when you pass on, and whenever that happens. But I do know that I feel I'm way ahead of a lot of people with the Alzheimer's, because I don't allow it to take over my life, and I refuse to be negative about it. I'm going to deal with it. It's there, and I'm moving on with my life.
Well, kudos to you, and congratulations on having that type of attitude, because it is going to benefit you in the long run. And I think the two of you together you're going to be, against this terrible disease, but because both of you are strong and both of you are positive and both of you, want to know what you can do and what's going to happen. You're tackling it together, and now you're sharing with the world, something that people never thought about before. They never maybe thought about what's a person that's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. What do they think? What do they feel? And I just think that it's wonderful and very brave of you to come and talk about your feelings. And so we're going to go to a next commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the clinical research that Barbara and David have both been involved in. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Do you need the advice of an elder law attorney, but perhaps find it difficult or overwhelming getting to appointments? The solution is the Elder Law Department. They bring elder law to you by meeting with you in the comfort of your own surroundings to discuss your personal situation and family needs. In practice since 1994, Heidi Friedman is a member of the Elder Law section of the Florida Bar. She and her team help families with issues that include incapacity and estate planning, asset preservation, veterans benefits, and other legal issues that seniors may face. Call the Elder Law Department at 954-383-1143. 954-383-1143. They bring elder law to you. Make First Choice your first choice for home health care. First Choice is state certified for Medicare covered services such as medical treatment and rehabilitation. Qualified healthcare professionals come to your home and work closely with your doctor to build a care plan designed to get you back on your feet as soon as possible. Founded and operated by registered nurses, First Choice Home Health is dedicated to providing exceptional home health care. Their highly skilled medical professionals have the knowledge and ability to provide patients quality care. Call First Choice Home Health at 561-296-2770. That's 561-296-2770. And tell them you want them as your first choice. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
I'd like to thank not only our local sponsors, but also our national sponsor, Arden Courts Memory Care Community, for helping to make this show possible. Arden Courts is an expert in the field of caring for people with Alzheimer's and other related diseases. They are there for not only the person that's been diagnosed, but also for the caregiver. They have support groups, they have educational seminars, and there are actually over 50 Arden Courts located all across the United States. As a resource, Arden Courts would like to give you, the caregiver, a free book. This is the 36-hour day book. If you haven't read this book, this is an awesome resource to learn about the disease, to learn about caregiving, lots of tips, lots of great facts and figures and information that's going to help you. And this book can be free to you. All you have to do is call the toll-free number for Arden Courts. That number is 888-478-2410. Again, 888-478-2410. Give them a call. Tell them you heard about this offer on the Caregiver Solutions Info program, and they'll be happy to mail one out to you right away. This book is about 330 pages long, and you can pick and choose whatever topics and whatever chapters that you want to read about, whatever is relevant to you at the time. So give them a call. Arden Courts would be very happy to hear from you so they can give you this book to help you in your caregiving efforts. So I'm here with David and Barbara, and David has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. He's been living with the disease for about 7 years now, and Barbara, his wife, is the caregiver. And we've talked about how David feels about being diagnosed and what happened when they first realized that there were some memory issues. So welcome back, guys, and we want to talk now about the research part of it, because I know, David, you explained that you have a positive outlook. And so because of that, you probably wanted to do whatever you could do to see how you could benefit from, your experience and help other people. So is that how the research started, Barbara? You decided that he wanted to, or the doctor asked you to be part of a research?
Well, the doctor explained to him that there was no cure. At this time, I can't offer you a pill or an injection that will stop the disease. The only thing that's going to save the problem from keep going and going is research. And he said, we can't offer you, we're involved in several research programs, and we'll we'll get you involved in one of those if you want to. And David was, at first, he thought maybe he could get a pill and that would be it. And he said, well, I don't know what's involved with this and all. But anyway, he went forward with it. And I must say that through the years, the research programs, and he's been on 4 different studies now, the research programs have kind of kept him hopeful that he was doing something about it.
Yes.
And you asked about Ariset. He was on Ariset at one point when he was on the research, and it disagreed with him, and then they put him on the Excellent patch.
Okay.
And it became very expensive, and he stopped it, and it didn't make any difference when he stopped it. So those are, as you say, Band-Aids. And the research kept him with a positive attitude, even when he was taken off of one and put on another one. It was something positive that he was doing towards maybe a cure. And that's the good thing about research.
Yes, it gives hope. There's hope.
Yes, exactly.
And I think, we always need hope, and do what we can do to promote, this research. And so thank you for, reporting to the doctor. I know that it's a series of visits. And Barbara, can you explain, I was going to ask David to explain, and you said you may not remember the process that you went through in the series of the visits and the different tests that you had to take, because it was over a period of a few years. So because Alzheimer's affects your short-term memory, you said you may not remember all of those facts. So I said, well, Barbara can share with us some of the things that were involved when you sign up for a research. Do you have to be there all the time? Does it interfere with your life? Is it something that you can do occasionally? Is it intrusive? Tell me your experience with the whole thing.
Usually it was a once a month visit, and then he would have one study. He would have an MRI each month. They do want to be very careful that they don't do anything negative to your body. That's very important to these researchers. They don't just say, well, you're on the program and that's it. They make sure that it's not affecting you any other way negatively. And then he would have a PET scan, which would be every 6 months, a PET scan. Again, a very, very expensive procedure. But that would be, again, to see where the brain was at and where your body was at. And there were visits with the doctors where he would sit you down and see if you're having any problems with what the procedure is. And basically it was taking a pill each day when you got up. Some of the studies do infusions where they give you a shot of the drug.
So it depends on the study.
Yes.
Some are pills, oral, and some are injections, infusions.
And then they also sent David to an eye doctor.
Really?
And
why would they do that?
To make sure that nothing in the eyes was being affected negatively. To keep a look on that, they sent it to a dermatologist to make sure, again, that the skin was not reacting negatively. And they would send him to these doctors depending on the study, doctors who would look at certain parts of the body to make sure that everything was going right.
Like the
with
liver,
the study.
maybe internal organs. I mean, because we know that Even the drugs that are FDA approved, like the Aricept and the Namenda, as you just mentioned, he had a negative reaction, didn't agree with him. And there are always negative side effects with something, not everybody gets them, not everybody experiences the side effects, but when you're reading the little pamphlet that comes with the pills and you're reading it could cause, and then there's a litany of different things, and you're like, wow, why am I even going to take this? And sometimes it's just something that you think is benign, but it's like, whoa, and then you wonder, wow, this is something very serious. So drugs, there's a saying years ago, say no to drugs. But drugs can be good, right? If they're used in the right way for the right thing. And sometimes you have to kind of take a risk-reward view and see, if I take this, I'm taking a risk, but what's going to be my reward, right?
Yeah.
So you're almost, the pros and cons of being in a research study, of taking the different pills. And when you're in the research study and you're taking the pill, right, David, you didn't know whether you were taking a placebo or the real test drug, right?
Exactly.
Because they don't tell you.
Neither does the doctor.
And the doctor
it's a
doesn't
blind
know
study.
either. Blind
now,
study.
You did mention about people who are taking Aricept. There is a new one out now, that you have to be on Aricept for at least 3 months, and then you go on this research program. And the problem was that David hasn't been on Aricept, so he couldn't go on this program. But it's supposed to be a very interesting new program for research that they're doing now, countrywide, statewide. So if you have been on Aricept, you might want to ask
Check
your
it out.
neurologist and see if you
So
can go
the
on
drug
that
companies are big pushers behind the clinical trials too, and the drug company that makes Aricept, obviously now they want to see with research the effect that it's had on people. Maybe they're looking at that efficacy, or how many side effects or concerns they might have with
and
it,
remember,
or they
you
might.
said Aricept and these drugs have a certain limited kind of period when they work.
Yes.
Maybe there's something that they can go into a next step, which is even better than the Aricept, but it's a continuation.
Right. So, Dave, I have a question for you. So, when you were going through the trials and the research, did you feel like you were a guinea pig?
Not at all. No, Dave, that wasn't a concern. I took the pills and went on with my life. It wasn't disrupting, and I didn't feel anything unusual. My thoughts were the same. Of course, I had lapses again. It was continuing on, and it's gotten worse. But the medication had nothing to do with it, as far as I could tell.
Okay. So you didn't feel any different?
No illnesses, no stomach illness or brain going crazy on me. It was no effect. I felt no effect.
Okay. So you felt, like Barbara said, hopeful that you're doing something good.
Well, I was on a path of hope, hoping this is the one that's good. And it's not just, again, I don't mean to sound egotistical, but I was never afraid of that at any time when I had the disease. I was hoping I could have some leadership in getting well with it and being able to say, here I am. I'm okay.
part of the solution.
Yeah. I'm part of the solution.
Yes.
And if that drug that you're on does work, does provide safety factors and good positive things at the end of it, you are promised that you will be on the drug that they have developed because you were a research subject.
Yes. Now, he was on 4 different trials you mentioned earlier. What was the longest one running? How long approximately did it run?
18 months.
Wow, that's pretty long. And the shortest? How short was the?
8 months.
Okay, and everything in between. And so they'll stop it sometimes abruptly if they find too many negative things that are happening with a new drug. They can stop it. Or I know if things are going well and they're seeing positive outcomes, then they can continue it and go to the next.
And David was stopped on a couple of them because he had other physical problems that took him to the hospital. And then the doctor said, well, now you've been in the hospital and you've had so much done differently and different drugs put into your body. Now we can't tell.
What?
So they would put him on another
Well,
study.
that makes sense, because if you have other conditions that warrant medication, they don't know how that medication is going to interfere with your placebo or the real drug that they're
And was
testing.
it throwing it out of balance? That's part of it. They don't know.
Yeah, they don't.
Until they do it, and then they find out, we made a mistake.
Yes.
And I had no problems dealing with it. It was whatever was needed. I received it, and it's just it's to my benefit.
Yes.
If nothing else, I can tell people what not to take.
There you go. And you're a warrior for that. Yeah. So we're going to take our last commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about Barbara, who has no diagnosis of dementia, who has no Alzheimer's disease, and her experience with research. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Do you need the advice of an elder law attorney, but perhaps find it difficult or overwhelming getting to appointments? The solution is the Elder Law Department. They bring elder law to you by meeting with you in the comfort of your own surroundings to discuss your personal situation and family needs. In practice since 1994, Heidi Friedman is a member of the Elder Law section of the Florida Bar. She and her team help families with issues that include incapacity and estate planning, asset preservation, veterans benefits, and other legal issues that seniors may face. Call the Elder Law Department at 954-383-1143. 954-383-1143. They bring elder law to you. Arden Courts is not just a place to live. It's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Welcome back. We're talking about clinical trials and research for Alzheimer's disease. And Barbara and David are here, and they're talking about their experience. And David's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease for 7 years, and Barbara, his wife, is the caregiver. And we're talking about the need for clinical trials. David, he just mentioned, he's doing this to try to help somebody, and that's why you're doing this. And again, thank you for that. There are very strict, stringent rules that the FDA expects the researchers, scientists to follow when they're actually researching and trying out a trial, going through a trial for a new drug, hopefully, that could eventually be on the market to treat Alzheimer's disease. So basically, there's 3 phases: phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And these are FDA guidelines. If you want to see this for yourself, you can go onto the internet. But I looked at Brain Matters Research. They have a website, brainmattersresearch.com, and they are a very well-known, respected company that does clinical trials here in South Florida. And the phase 1 basically is when a pharmaceutical company creates a new compound. It's called a compound, and supposedly it's supposed to help with a disease, whether it's for cancer, Alzheimer's, or whatever it is. pretty much the phases are the same depending upon what the disease is. So the pharmaceutical companies first have to show that this compound is safe and shows some evidence that it works for the disease that it's trying to work on, that there's some efficacy for that, because they're not going to just be creating these compounds willy-nilly and, putting them out there. I mean, this is very, very well regulated, very strict. And after the FDA reviews all of the reports and all the research that's been done with the scientists and the pharmaceutical companies working hand in hand, first the drug is tested in people without any clinical disease, without. And they're trying to establish safety and what they call dose reliability, and how much a person can tolerate. So they're looking at tolerability, reliability of the drug, efficacy of the drug. If this particular compound is found to be safe and the dosage levels have been tested, then it's actually exposed to patients with the actual disease that it's meant to treat. So in other words, once it's actually given to people that don't have Alzheimer's, then it goes through the phase 1, then they can actually give it to people that actually have Alzheimer's to see how the effect is on them. Then it goes to phase 2. The second stage of research involves what they call a proof of concept with treating the patients with the disease to show evidence. Now they're looking for that evidence of confirming the safety and evidence that the drug is actually working. So sometimes they can be in phase 2 for a very long period of time. And finally, in phase 3, if the drug is showing promise, then with phase 3 studies, they are performed on a much larger scale. So they're involving a lot more people on a larger scale. And this is the last step before they present their findings to the FDA to get the drug officially approved with that FDA stamp and get it on the market for patients of that particular disease. So basically, that is what is going on behind the scenes before a new drug comes on the market. This is what happened with Aricept and Namenda and all those other drugs that you hear about that we all take for any condition that we have. They all have to be FDA approved. So that being said, Barbara,
Yes.
I know that you are participating. Is it currently participating in a
going
trial?
into my second year.
You're going into your second year. So is this for an Alzheimer's study that you're going in for a clinical trial?
Yes.
And tell me why you decided to do this, because you don't have Alzheimer's.
No, but when I was with David at the office where he was doing his study, they asked if I would be interested in doing a study perfectly because I don't have signs of the disease. And they said they would do a test, make sure nothing has changed. And the reason is to find out if they can prevent someone who doesn't have it from ever getting it. And I said, well, count me in. You know, why not?
Wow.
And it's called Tomorrow, the study that I'm on.
Wow. So that's what they call the Tomorrow study, because they're looking forward to the future for tomorrow, to maybe even preventing this from ever happening. So they're looking for people as yourself that do not have cognitive impairment. And now what do? Are you taking a pill?
Yes. And I asked about the pill. I said, well, can it affect me, negatively in another way? And they said, no, it happens to be a pill that was made because they found that people who are taking certain diabetic medications, those people seem to be not coming down with Alzheimer's in the numbers, the percentages.
Okay.
And so what they've done is taken that pill and done a small pill which has maybe a quarter of the amount that was being given to the diabetics.
And they tweaked it. Probably tweaked it to...
And that's what I take each morning. I take one of those pills, and I don't have to go to see anyone now for 6 months. And then in 6 months' time, I go and they do another test on me with the memory test, and then and then they give me another portion of it for another 6 months if nothing is proven to be negative. And I have to have a caregiver come with me too.
Yes, to help answer questions of maybe something that they see in you that you don't see in yourself.
Yes.
Same as you go with David. So, David, thank you. Barbara, thank you for coming. David, what last words would you like to give to people since you do have hope that there's going to be a cure? What would you like to say?
Well, I think the word hope is probably the best thing I can tell people, and don't diminish the fact that you could be cured from this disease sooner than we know. We just have no clue. So being involved gives me an opportunity to be free of the disease.
That's awesome. And Barbara, what would you like to say to people?
That there is some hope for anybody. You've only got so much time, and if you can make that time, whatever it may be, positive. And David was in a very negative state.
So it's giving him hope, and do what you can while you can do it.
Take the research program and
run
hope.
with it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming today. Thank you all for watching and tuning in to CareGiverSolutions.info. Caregiver Solutions Info Show is here for you. We'll be back next week. In the meantime, don't forget, give somebody a hug because they need it and so do you.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its hosts, guests, and